Mohotani. Mohotani, sometimes spelt Moho Tani, also called Molopu or Motane, is an uninhabited island southeast of Hiva Oa and east of Tahuata in the southern Marquesas Islands. It has an area of 15 km². Much of the island's sparse vegetation has been destroyed by feral goats and sheep to the extent that following its rare rains, the sea around it is stained red from runoff. Early reports describes the island as fertile, with forest and fields. When Thor Heyerdahl visited the island in 1938, there were only a few goats and remains of deserted huts and villages. Mohotani is administratively part of the commune municipality of Hiva Oa itself in the administrative subdivision of the Marquesas Islands. It is reported that at one time the island was inhabited by a clan called the Molopu, but that population has long since been wiped out by disease and war, the few survivors having departed for Hiva Oa. In pre-European times, the island was considered part of the territory of the province of Pepane. In 1992, the island and its surrounding smaller islands, including Terihi, were officially protected by the declaration of the Motane Nature Reserve. History. Before the arrival of Westerners, Moho Tani was inhabited by the Molopu tribe. It was the smallest inhabited island in the archipelago. Decimated by fighting and disease brought by foreign sailors, the few survivors eventually abandoned the island and headed for Hiva Oa. Mohotane is uninhabited today, but there is clear archaeological evidence to suggest a permanent Polynesian settlement. American anthropologist Ralph Linton 1893 Thor Heyerdahl found several stone house platforms pp in the arid east of the island during a brief foray in 1938. The island was inhabited by a single clan called Molopu, a collateral line of a tribe from Hiva Oa. Mohotane was discovered in 1595 by the Spanish navigator Alvaro de Mendana de Neira on his second voyage to Europe. He did not set foot on the island, but named it San Pedro in honor of Saint Simon Peter and in reference to the name of its captain, Pedro Fernandez de Quiros. Mendana described it as an island covered with much forest and could see no signs of inhabitants. James Cook, during his second voyage to the Pacific, passed through the strait between the islands of Hiva Oa and Mohotane on April 7, 1774, but without entering Mohotane. He describes the island as follows. San Pedro Mohotane is rather high, but not mountainous, and is about 3 leagues in circumference. The island lies for 1/2 leagues south of the eastern point of La Dominica, Hiva Oa, and we do not know whether it is inhabited or not, probably not, however, as nature does not seem to have endowed it with anything that men require. In the cartographic sketch of William Wales, astronomer aboard the Resolution, Mohotane is marked with the name Aniteo, probably the name given to it by the inhabitants of the island of Hiva Oa. In 1992, it was declared Motane Island Nature Reserve Naturelle de l'Île de Motane to protect its endangered ecosystem. The reserve extends to Terihi Islet, which is home to colonies of seabirds such as gannets, terns, and frigate birds. Geography. Moho Tani is located 17 km south and southeast of Hiva Oa, 21 km east of Tahuata, and 47 km north of Fatu Iva. With an area of 15 km², it forms an open crescent to the east, about 8 km long from north to south and 2 km wide at most from east to west. It is a high island, with its highest elevation 500 years and its overall shape resembles the back of a whale. Terihi. At 300 meters to the southeast is Terihi, a rocky islet of 0.150 km², with a very steep coastline and a total perimeter of 3.4 kilometers, which is part of the same volcanic complex. It rises 245 meters above sea level. The flora is sparse and consists mainly of the hardy grass Eragrostes xerophila and the slow-growing nightshade Nicotiana fragrans var fatuhivensis, a species endemic to Fatu Hiva. Geology. Moho Tani corresponds to the west-southwestern part of a collapsed caldera, which belonged to a much larger volcano, about 10 kilometers in diameter. This volcano was born from the presence of a hot spot in this part of the world several million years ago. The island was formed in two phases, the most recent of which dates from about 2.2 million years ago. It is composed mainly of basalt. Flora and fauna. Moho Tani has been protected since 1971, French Polynesia Sites Commission, Order No. 2559 of July 28, 1971. Hunting is regulated and requires a permit, but the remote island is also visited without a permit. In addition, trees are illegally cut down to obtain wood for the souvenir industry. Effective management and monitoring of the protected area is still lacking. Sheep introduced by French settlers from Hiva Oa in the second half of the 19th century have run rampant and cause erosion by grazing low vegetation. Flora. Mohotane can be divided into three vegetation zones. The east is arid over a wide swath, the north has little vegetation, and the west center of the island is covered by dense forest that remains largely pristine. The entire east is arid due to animal browsing, and vegetation cover is sparse. In favorable locations, Nicotiana fragrans var. Fatuhivensis, which belongs to the tobacco plants and is endemic to Fatu, Hiva, and Mokatane, Purslane portulaca ulracea, and the herbs Iragrostes xerophila and Brachiaria reptans grow. The northern part of the island is also severely damaged by grazing. The evergreen shrub Arbutelon hirtum, Cordia lutea, and Wolferia tomentosa appear as low-growing forms. Pisonia grandis, Primna tahitsis, and Morinda citrifolia also grow in the few places that are not accessible to animals. The central plateau in the west is covered by a dense forest area that covers about a quarter of the island. It consists of giant Pisonia grandis which not infrequently reach a height of 30 to 40 meters. Other common trees are Cordia subcordata, Thespesia populnea, Hibiscus tiliaceus, Pandanus tectorius, Ficus marcusensis, Casuarina equistifolia, and occasional coconut trees among them. Fauna. There are only two species of mammals, neither of which is indigenous: the Pacific rat, probably introduced by Polynesians as a food animal, and sheep which Europeans settled in the 19th century. 10 species of seabirds and 7 species of land birds, 2 of which are endemic, have been observed in Mohotane. Frigate birds nest in the large Pisonius. Other seabirds found at Mohotane and Terihi include Nadi anis stolidus, city tern Sterna fuscata, and fairy tern Gyges alba. Among the land birds, the Marquesas monarch in the Palmaria mendezimentensis variation, and Acrosphalis cavriconsabrinus, a subspecies of the long-billed warbler, are endemic. Other rare and threatened species include the Marquesas warbler Acrosphalis mendini, the Marquesas salingana aerodramus ocistus, and the petit thouars fruit pigeon Tilinopus dupetifwasiae. Resources: Christian F.W. Eastern Pacific Lands, Tahiti and the Marquesas Islands. London, 1910. Heyerdahl, Thor Heyerdahl.